Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the season finale of the Crashing After Show that I thought was going to be just a season finale, though we learned this is in fact the series finale of the Crashing After Show. We've got plenty of thoughts about season 3, episode 8, Mulaney. We'll be telling you about them right after this.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the final after show for Crashing. And Alana, you know, I'm glad you're here to do it with me.
I'm glad I'm here too.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be the final.
I know you started the show like last week. And
I know.
that's all you get. That, of course, guys, is the voice of my brilliant co-host, Elena Jordan. Elena, so glad to have you. And my name is Jeff Graham, and this is it.
This is it.
This is the final episode, you guys.
It's crashed.
The announcement, it is in fact crashed. The announcement came on like Wednesday, or maybe Thursday, which is crazy because, you know, it didn't give them much time to process before airing this finale. But I guess it's nice. It at least gives the viewers some finality when they're watching the episode.
Finality to the finale.
Finality to the finale. We'll be talking a little bit about the news of the cancellation later in the show. I found a really nice article in the New York Times about it that I want to read some quotes from. But, of course, we'll first talk about the episode. So how about we do that right now? Elena, how did you feel about the series finale of Crashing?
Oh,
I know.
What's rough is because this is the series finale, I really want to hype it up because I really loved the show.
Yeah.
But I just was not a huge fan of this episode, honestly. I thought that several things leading up to this episode were going to be to kind of play with different stereotypes and tropes and then break them, kind of in a way that most HBO shows do. This one I felt leaned into it a little too hard. It got a little too unrealistic for me.
Yeah.
And I felt like because we've seen the caliber that this show can be,
Right.
I expected more for what the finale ended up being.
I agree. I mean, we've talked so much about how this show is constantly surprising. Even the middling episodes do things that we didn't see coming. And unfortunately, it did feel like, you mentioned it was sort of tropey before you went on air. It did kind of feel like it was hitting all the familiar beats of an episode of TV that would be like this.
It did. It felt kind of like it was almost going back to early kind of episodes where it's like, all right, here's the formula for what you have in a sitcom. Make sure we hit these. I mean, even down to the minute mark, like broken up into the thirds, into the three acts of it that then ends with that kiss with the credits. And I was like, what? Oh, what is happening? What is, I don't know. I just expected a little bit more.
A little unsurprising for a show that loved to lean into naturalism. Yeah. And I gotta say, I love me some John Mulaney. He probably is my favorite stand-up, if I'm being honest. I've seen him live a couple times.
Nice.
I sort of didn't love them portraying him as so dickish. And I know that was like probably it turning the fact that we would never expect that from him on his head. Like, it's funny to see someone play an exaggerated or like a heel version of themselves. But for some reason with good old John Mulaney's, it kind of rubbed up against me.
You know, that I don't think bothered me as much as just the unrealistic aspect of somebody saying, look, this was a huge mix-up to begin with.
Right.
Which I also feel like they released a little bit too much of the plot in the, like, next week on. Like, I was like, oh, that ended up being the whole episode.
I actually didn't watch the next week on the week before.
Really?
But was it like we found out that he was misbooked?
Yes.
Yeah, that does feel like something you might want to
It's like the whole thing. I was like, okay. That's again why I just expected more. I was like, oh, this will be the setup. This will be early on.
And then something will happen.
Then, yes, then the main part of the show will happen. I was like, oh, no, that was the whole arc. Okay.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time like waiting around, didn't we?
Yeah, and then just the idea of basically looking into this experience and John Mulaney, I think rightfully being kind of pissed off that this was the scenario, that now he doesn't know this person who's about to go up, and then saying, you know, this is my public persona. I'm sorry that I got heated. Please just acknowledge the apology aspect of this and not the in the moment scenario, and then he just goes on stage and just roasts him, and then John's like, great job, chap, very nice, let's all go out and have a delightful meal. And
Yeah.
I didn't believe it. Like, I just
agree.
expected him to, when he shook his hand, like, instead of being like, you're not bad, being like, you're a dead man.
Yeah, me too. Let's save that conversation because there are so many ways that scene could have gone, and I want to give that its due diligence. When we start the episode, we start by seeing Pete kind of purge himself from Kat. I thought this was a nice sequence. This might have been the highlight of the episode if you think about it in terms of what the show can do. How did you feel about this montage, this purging yourself?
I liked it. I liked him gathering up all of her stuff and putting it in a box, and then like the comedic aspect of him deciding, should I put this vibrator in the recycling or in the trash? Like, I thought that's the kind of humor that we've seen, like just subtle things that are like not trying to be funny.
It's like that single cam joke, you know? It's not like the multicam punchline. It's like the what can we do with the close up kind of joke.
Did you ever watch the show Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip?
I love Aaron Sorks, but I never watched that show. I'm a 30 Rock guy.
I love 30 Rock too, but I absolutely loved that show. And there was one line that I think kind of sums up what I had issue with this entire episode, is that one of the characters, Harriet, is saying, in dress rehearsal, there's this line that killed where, I asked the pass me the salt line and nobody laughed this time. What happened? And he's like, well, this time you asked for the laugh. She's like, well, what did I do in dress rehearsal? And he's like, you asked for the salt.
Oh, damn.
And I'm like, that is just, I think, what fully encapsulated this entire episode was. I was like, okay, you're trying too hard for the laughs now. And what has made this show so funny is like that earlier scene, like what gets an audible chuckle is just the daily struggle of like, okay, now I'm purging myself of this person that I couldn't really handle. Like, I have no use for this vibrator, but do I recycle it? Like, what's the good person thing to do in this scenario?
I'm trying to listen to you, Elena, but I keep thinking of how good that line is you just said. Aaron Sorkin's such a good writer.
Isn't it genius? It resonates with me so much. Anytime I'm doing anything in comedy, I always think about it.
Play the truth of the scene. It's funny, I know Aaron Sorkin is like widely regarded as like our best living American writer for the screen, but like when you hear lines like that, you're like, okay, like, yeah. He is.
It's good.
So I'll try
you should
to
watch the
listen now.
show.
It's
good.
Like, damn, that line. So
but
good.
doesn't it? Like, it seems like that's what happened.
Yeah, I
is
agree.
that because most of this show, they've asked for the salt. And so we've played along. We've laughed. Like, there have been scenarios that were like, okay, that's outlandish. It's very unlikely that, Artie Lang or Sarah Silverman are going to be like, hey, random guy, come crash on my couch. That's fine. Like, it's like, okay, this is a TV version of this. But all of the scenarios were very much a realistic depiction of what Pete would do in these situations. Yeah. Whereas I wasn't buying it as much this episode. It felt like they were asking for the laugh.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, that's okay. I mean, not every episode is going to be a 10 out of 10. It hurts a little bit when it's the series finale. But you know what? A lot of great shows have mass series finales. So in some ways, it's cementing itself among some of the other great comedies that don't go out with the bang you'd hope. But
it bums me out because it seems like it was setting up thinking that there would be more. And I think if they had known that this was the finale, it would have been probably written and played differently.
I've heard speculation of potentially a film, which HBO will do. Like, they did a film for Looking, which in some ways, I would definitely watch a crashing movie. I mean, in some ways, Looking is sort of the same, obviously a very different target demo, but in some ways a really similar demo in the fact that it's like people who love the sort of like mumblecore dramedy version of a half-hour comedy. So I actually never watched Looking, but I heard it was really good. I like Jonathan Groff. Okay, so let's talk about Pete and John Mulaney's kind of weirdly contentious relationship.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to see John Mulaney be such a turd.
It was weird. I don't know. Sometimes I get that vibe a little bit from John Mulaney.
Do you?
Is that he's probably kind of more of an a-hole than he
behind the scenes
really lets on. Like, even just his Saturday Night Live intro and stuff. Like,
he's kind of a curmudgeon. Like, he jokes that he's like a cranky 70-year-old lady, but I don't feel like he's got like that.
I don't think he's malicious.
Yeah, he's Mulaney.
He's Mulaney. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Nice.
Yeah, it felt like it was a little forced too. Like I felt like the Amy Schumer thing was unnecessarily mean. Like I felt like it was just kind of shoehorned in there. Like
Yeah.
I sincerely doubt that Amy Schumer just goes up to somebody who her friend says, "Oh, he just broke up with his girlfriend." And it's like, "Well, you know you're gonna die alone, right?" Ha ha ha. Let's all laugh.
Right. It's
You know, like it's like I don't know. It felt like John Mulaney.
I think it would have been funnier for me to see Mulaney play like anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? You're not good. You're new. Like, there's a way to make it mean so it's not just mean, but it's like, there are people who, when they get stressed out, accidentally say very mean things.
Yeah.
I think there's an angle there where he's like, I can't have some green, no-name comic open my show. No offense, but you know what I'm saying. Like, there's something there.
I think that's 100% how it should have been played,
Yeah.
and how I think they were even trying to play it,
Yeah.
but didn't fully
Lean in.
get there. Yeah, it seemed like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like it was almost like they were focusing too much on the Pete lines than on the Mulaney lines to make it really
Right.
work. I don't know.
Well, and then, of course, we find out, Mulaney tries to call his friends. I like the name drops here. Little Mike Birbiggs, Chris Gethard, who ends up showing up, Greer Barnes. Trying to if there was any other names mentioned. Maybe Nick Kroll. Was he mentioned?
No, John Stewart was one.
John
He was
Stewart.
like, I know this is a reach.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, that's a reach,
That
man.
is a reach,
Like,
even for you, John Mulaney. But none of them can make it in time for the big show. So we got to put Pete on stage, and he's going to do his 10 minutes. I almost wish there would have been a way that he would have gotten, well, I guess we already signed a contract, so you have to go up. Even if, Chris Gethard, again, yeah, I agree with you. This was sort of a tropey version of this plot, and there's a way you could have made the engine of the plot still lead to the same result with some maybe different turns or something.
yeah, like
I don't know.
100%. I think if they had leaned into like a contract aspect of it,
Yeah.
where they need like, and now there's a contract, and just see like that create a Mulaney spiral,
Yeah.
which would make more sense, I think, than
contract?
just like, than him just being like, because then it would be him taking some responsibility too. Like he signed it without really looking, like
Yeah.
some sort of something.
I hear you.
Where he was then able to take some blame for himself, because self-deprecating humor people are okay with, but
Right.
just attacking, which is what they try to play it for laughs, I don't know.
Didn't necessarily play for me. I will say, once we finally got Pete on stage, I did like his set.
His I
At
did
Town
think
Hall.
that it was really funny, but again, that's the same thing that has been kind of echoed, and what was even told to him at the cellar initially is like, you can't do generic white guy jokes. It has
Yeah.
to be something that is specific to you. It has to be something authentic. And that, I think, was the best advice that I ever got when I started stand-up.
Yeah.
Was
Point of view.
not to drop this name here, but
it. Drop it.
Leslie Jones was the first person who kind of mentored me in comedy when I moved out here. It was 6 years ago. God, that was a long time ago.
It happens. I know. I'm coming on my 5.
I was like, ooh, yeah. Wasn't expecting it to go by that fast, but
Yeah, my birthday's in a week, and I'm like, I don't like my birthday anymore.
same.
It's all right. I'll just be low key about it.
Oh,
Turning
well.
21, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Every year, just another 21.
It's like my I think it's my 7th 21st birthday. Not quite. It's like my 6th 21st birthday.
However many you need.
Yeah.
I'm doing the Russian Doll after show after this.
Nice.
And so that is, again, just however many birthdays you need. So that lets us know it works.
I love it.
Which actually, speaking of the multiple after shows that we do here at AfterBuzz TV,
I see what you did there.
what's really nice about AfterBuzz is that all of them are organized in a way that makes it extra easy for everybody to find. The sci-fi, comedy, drama, reality, whatever you
Soaps.
want.
We got soaps.
Yeah, you can click on whatever you want to subscribe to, but whichever ones you enjoy, please do subscribe, rate, comment, give us that 5 stars, that thumbs up, especially on iTunes. We love getting comments on iTunes because we don't get as many on that one. It kind of bumps us up a little bit in the
does.
searches so people can find us a little easier as well.
Yeah.
But just help us continue to be the ESPN of TV talk. And also let us know what you think of Crashing and of all of the, I know you do, The Bachelor.
I do. The season finale's tonight. It's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
I will say, however you feel about The Bachelor, it has been a hell of a season. It's been wild. Have you heard about the fence jump?
No.
I'll keep it quick, but one of the Bachelor, it's out now. It's not a spoiler. He literally ripped off his lav and jumped a 10-foot fence. And like production, he got like lost in the Portuguese wilderness. What? And production like couldn't find him. And it's been, the thing is they're finally allowing the franchise to break the rules. So it's like truly wild mind-bending appointment television. Because you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen this commercial break.
Oh my God, that's insane.
It's like actually pretty good.
This is what I want from Crashing. I want
jump.
Pete to just like rip the mic off, climb a fence.
Yes.
Jump over onto the stage. No, I'm doing my 10. Like, I don't know.
Well, the surprise we might have wanted to sort of transition back into the show is we both liked his set. I liked that he wasn't afraid to lean into Mulaney being a dick a little bit. It played funny, and the audience liked it too. And I will say, however you feel about Sweetie Pete Pants Holmes' comedy, he has a warmth about him that does make you want to get on his team. So, like, he can call another comic out in a way where you're like, okay, I believe him. Like, this is funny. Like, you know, he's a warm comic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's like, it's coming from a good place, which is, and where he's even saying, even when Mulaney is being kind of a dick, is that it's coming from like a nicer.
Right. And he's like
it's coming from a confusion, not just a malicious anger.
And I get it. That was what was funny about it. Yeah,
because again, self-deprecating comedy plays.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was able to turn it and be like, yeah, like I'm a nobody, and they were like, he asked for you by name, and he's like, that checks out. Like I don't need to verify that. Like that makes sense.
Ben Holmes. Well, first of all, my name's Pete.
Yeah, he's like, I love that with just the long, awkward silence. But what's funny to me is I feel like that just made me think very like Man on the Moon. Like I was just thinking very Andy Kaufman in that moment. Like
I've actually never seen Man on the Moon.
Really?
I know.
Andy Kaufman, one of his greatest things is the Mighty Mouse sketch where he just goes and he just stands in silence and then does the one like, here he comes to save the day. And there really is just a humor in prolonged silence. So for it to be this long beat and then actually it's Pete, that is hilarious. Like that's intrinsically funny because it's also an honest moment. Right. Oh, and the reason that I was dropping Leslie's name is because the advice that she gave was to say, if you ever get stuck, if you're just completely bombing on stage, don't try to say something funny, just say something true. Say something about yourself that is true that nobody else could say.
Wow.
And that's 9 times out of 10, it works to try to get an audience at least a little bit back on your side, is just kind of utilizing that silence and then coming back with some random thing.
Have you been in touch with Leslie since the ascent?
I've seen her a couple times and I've said hello and she's been very kind. Good. But I'm like, I can tell that she's also like, I don't really know you. Like, we're not going to hang. Like, but
I'm sure
like,
it's still, there's 2 types of like professional obligatoriness with celebrities. There's the one that's truly obligatory, and the other that's like, hey, it really is great to see you, but I don't have time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
she's very, very kind. And Eric, who also did the show, is very kind, and I see him as well, too. But,
love it.
I mean, he's not on SNL, but,
maybe one day.
That's what kind of shoehorned me in, was like, kind of helped me out. But
cool. Well, we talked about before we went live that we kind of wish Mulaney's reaction to Pete's honesty on stage, rather than to embrace him, would be to just lean in all the way and say, like, you're a dead man, or like, you've made a huge mistake, you know, with a smile.
That's what I would think. Like, I mean, especially if they're trying, I mean, I guess that they're like, see, look, he's not really a bad guy. He's really nice. Like, he took it in stride. But I don't think that he would have, and I wouldn't have, if I specifically just gave you instructions and was like, this is what you need to avoid so that you don't potentially tank my set.
Right. Even if it was like the next day where he said, hey, I thought back on it, I watched the set, it really was pretty good. In that moment, there's no way he would have based on the character that the show gave us, whoever Mulaney is in real life, based on the way this guy was written, I had trouble with that turn.
Yeah, because I was like, if he's so emotional that he would do those things that he is saying are so negative, that, you know, he would call somebody else in front of me and like not even think about how that would affect my emotion.
Right. Okay,
well then if you call him out on stage after he just specifically told you not to, he's not going to be like, oh, hilarious. I mean, it's not also indicative of who you are as a comedian, really.
Right.
It's just rehashing the story of what just happened, which is funny, but you were specifically instructed not to do it. That's the whole thing is up until this point. And I don't want to like get on my feminist rant.
That's okay.
Again, but like
it's a valuable perspective.
When they had Allie like being punished at NACA for not playing by the rules, and then they have Pete constantly not playing by the rules and being rewarded for it.
It's true.
And it just is set up where I'm like, okay, so what is your message here? What are you trying to say?
It's a hot take.
You know, like it bothers me that it's like, okay, so anything that she does, even though she's already proven herself to work hard
and got on Seth.
Yeah, and be incredibly talented and do all of these and accomplish these things. And we've already seen her be kind of knocked down. The very first episode that I was on this show was the one where they are on tour and she's forced to still just open.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, we see all of this. Every single thing that Pete does that should have resulted in, you know, he's like, oh, my manager I thought was going to fire me because I quit this tour that I shouldn't have. But instead, I'm getting Mulaney. That's so great. And I'm like, okay, but if this was Allie, you wouldn't have written that to be the scenario, 100%. Like,
I'm not going to say you're wrong, Elena.
You know, like to me, I'm like, okay, so he breaks the rules and gets rewarded for it. And then again, Mulaney specifically says, these are what you avoid and don't make me sound like a bad guy. And then he goes on stage and does the exact opposite and then gets rewarded for it again. And then goes and does very generic, goes to the cellar, has somebody vouch for him again, goes on stage, does very generic white guy jokes that, again, are not specific to him, that are very forgettable, in my opinion. I feel like the pee in the pool thing was more memorable than what he did this episode. Like, I don't even really remember the joke specifically, just that they were very generic and I didn't really laugh. And then he's rewarded for that again.
That's a good point. Hot takes from Elena Jordan. I didn't mind his cellar set. I didn't think it was his best, but yeah, I thought like for the level of career he's at, it was, you know what, though, it was fine. And like,
it was fine. It wasn't like career changing.
I agree, especially for SD to be watching. You want him to knock it out of the park, but that's okay. I feel like we're being a little tough on this episode is because we love the show so much.
I do really, really love the show, and I think that's why. Because I also thought that they were going to find some way to wrap up with Kat, and I'm like, no, you just left her as like the crazy ex-girlfriend trope that I despise. So
well, how do we feel about the fact that we end the final moments of this whole show are a reconciled relationship with good old Jamie Lee? I agree.
I did not want that to happen.
I didn't mind that it happened. It feels a little weird that it's the final moment of this series.
It just it felt again very tropey. Like I hate to keep going back to that word, but it just seemed like, okay, you couldn't have set up where they could just be friends. It's like you have to conveniently write in, oh, I broke up with Ted because he was absolutely perfect in all the wrong ways. Like the most stereotypical, like,
right,
you're a broken guy and that's better for me type deal, which I'm like, not better for her. Like, Pete is not better for Allie.
Right, he's
point.
not
like,
mature enough to date.
No, like, this isn't good for her at all. She just did late night. Like, what are you doing? Why are you regressing back to this dude?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like, I liked that they were trying to say that kind of, you know, if you're going to call Kat crazy for thinking this, that you're going to be getting back together with your ex-girlfriend, and then you immediately go and get back together with your ex-girlfriend.
I agree.
You're still playing her as, like, there's something wrong with her for...
You're right. It's like the season was painting them getting back together as a huge mistake. So for them to have the or like a hugely... Like, for him to be in denial with Kat, it kind of makes both of them look like garbage people a little bit, that they got back together right away. And I just don't feel like I needed it. I don't feel like, in some shows, the will they, won't they, so satisfying. Like, are you a Friends fan?
Yeah.
So however you feel about Friends, when Rachel comes back in and says, I got off the plane, and runs up and hugs Ross, everyone in America wept. You know?
Do you want to know the meanest thing that has probably ever happened to me in my entire life?
I'm ready. Someone's...
I was on my way to a watching party for Friends, and I was late because I was coming back from, like, this was way back. I mean, like, from class or something. And I was like, okay, they just did the whole, like, phone call thing. Like, I don't know if she's going to get off the plane. Like, I'm going to drive there, and hopefully I get there before commercials are over, you know, whatever. I get there, and my friend opens the door, and he's like, oh, my God, did you see? And I was like, what? And they're like, she didn't get off the plane, and the plane crashed, and Rachel died. And it was this, and I was like, oh, what? And I, like, lost it, like, thinking that Friends, like, killed off Rachel because she, like, wasn't with Ross. And he was like, I'm just messing with you. meanest thing that anybody has ever done.
Insanity. But that's what I'm saying is that show planted the seeds for us to want that. I'm not sure this show really worked hard to make me like yearn for. In fact, I almost feel like it planted the seeds for me to love them as a platonic friendship. Like I felt like this show is validating the fact that professionals can really respect each other and not have to be together.
That's really what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I think both of us were.
And I think it would have been a much stronger choice and would have been way better overall. And just the way that they like when he just kisses her out of nowhere, I'm like, I thought she was going to slap him, and she really should have. And that should have been like, I don't. And the fact that we've been talking about how he keeps making these poor career choices to chase after women, like standing up the rabbi. Now, John Mulaney and freaking Greer Barnes and like all
Chris Gethard.
Are saying, hey, do you want to come get food with us? And he's like, nah, I'm going to go randomly kiss my ex-girlfriend, even though we've had no previous conversation about it. And
I have to agree. Guys, if we're being too shady,
I don't know.
Please disagree in the comments. One thing I've loved is the last 4, we have this army of people who are like joining our conversation, which we truly do earnestly love. There are some podcasts you listen to and they're like, send us a tweet, and they're not going to get back. They just say it obligatorily. We
want to know.
We want to know. So if you guys hop in the comments, we will definitely read them and respond. So let us know your thoughts. If we're being curmudgeon-y farts, let us know, because you might have loved the episode. And that'd be great if you did, truly, because I wanted to love this episode. So
it just, to me, it seemed like it was too shiny.
A little too shiny. Yeah.
And because that's not what we've seen in like that's not why we like this show. Like, we don't love it for Pete's shiny life. We like it for all of these weird, unconventional twists and turns. Like, I mean, the fact that his ex-wife and Leaf were his guests for John Mulaney, it's like that in itself lended itself to so much more comedy. I mean,
agree.
I liked it.
It was an untapped.
But yeah, and I was like, oh, even when Mulaney came over and they talked, like, they didn't address that relationship at all. Like, there was so much there that I felt could have been tapped into that would have been hilarious.
It would have been funny if John was like, so how did you two, or if John was like, so how did you two meet? And they're just like, there's such a joke there,
Yeah.
Well, Pete and I used to be together, but then the two of us, we're all friends, like something like that.
We used to be roommates, but it was after there was, there's so much there.
There's a joke there. You're right. Get us in that writer's room, yo. It's all good, though. The reason we have these criticisms is because this show has been so special over these last 3 seasons. And again, some of you guys might have loved this episode, and if you did, please let us know. The one moment I loved, though, was when Pete finally got a seat at the table.
Yeah.
We could have ended there, I think.
Yeah. I think that would have been...
Because that's kind of been like the running gag all series. And it's like, to me, it's an appropriate level of fame for him right now. Like, I like the idea, like, even if it just means sitting at the table at the Comedy Cellar, the show does a good job of making the small things feel big. And to me, that's an example of a small thing with much greater implications. And that could have been how he wrapped the series.
I would have loved that, honestly.
Well,
because it's like, I want to see him... I really wanted to see if they're going to make him pick one or the other, a dynamic, like a relationship or his comedy career. I would have liked to see him be more career focused at the end and really focusing on this objective that he's been working towards.
Yeah.
And have it end with him at the table. Like, that, I think, is a perfect way to end it. We didn't need the kiss. We didn't need any of that. Like, even just the text.
Yeah.
Like, and then maybe just one that's like, hey, do you want to meet up tomorrow? And then just like a smile.
For sure. Like, do you want to meet tonight? Not tonight. Or something like that. I don't know. It's all good. We love this show, and I want to hear what you guys thought of this episode overall. I want to real quick just take 3-4 minutes and kind of talk about this series, because this is the series finale. What did you think? I mean, you have become a new Crashing fan. What do you think makes this series special? When you think about its legacy on HBO, what stands out to you? And then maybe also a moment that you would pick from the show to...
Oh, put me on the spot.
Put you on the
spot. It's hard to pick one moment.
If you want, I can first it, if you want.
Okay, you go first. I
think this show... I talked about it a lot, but I think it took a very open-minded approach towards religion. We've had a lot of stand-up comedy shows on TV, and I think this show brought some new discussions around what it means to be a stand-up, but to specifically sort of have an open-minded conversation around evangelical Protestantism... I feel like, especially sort of like that acoustic guitar playing hands up Christianity gets a really sort of narrow portrayal on television, and one that I often laugh at because I grew up in this environment. But to see a sort of nuanced and complicated look at like sort of what the modern evangelical Christian looks like was really interesting and something I truly hadn't seen much on television before. So I'm going to applaud Crashing for that. And a moment for me would have to be that baptism episode.
Oh yeah,
It's like really interesting.
I did love that. I loved that. And yeah, I think you're right. This definitely is a fresh take because I feel like most religion, whenever it's incorporated into a show, is kind of used as a punchline.
Especially in a comedy.
In a comedy, yeah, especially. And I mean, for a stand-up show, especially, I mean, they could have definitely gone into using it as a punchline on multiple episodes and multiple situations and never did. And I do really respect that. I think that's pretty cool.
Cool.
I do like too that they were willing to kind of broach the women in comedy aspect, even if ultimately kind of how I feel about the finale is that it retconned it a little bit.
It did retcon a little bit.
Yeah, but overall, I feel like it's been showing a pretty true to life arc with all of the female characters, really, and showing multifaceted female characters that can be strong characters in that they don't always make the best choice. Because the strongest female characters aren't necessarily the stereotype of, you know, the perfect idealized woman. It's somebody who can make realistic choices.
Yeah.
And still be a character that we genuinely care about. And I feel like we have that with the majority of the female characters that we've seen on this show.
It's nice to hear.
So I liked it a lot. A specific moment, I mean, I kind of going off of that, Allie putting Don in his place in the parking lot was... You know, that one was too, just because the acting was so brilliant and just the heartache that you see in him and this multifaceted, you know, there is no good guy, bad guy scenario. There's just broken people who can either lash out at others or try to help. And I thought that this was just played really, really well. And they've had so many moments this series that were absolutely perfectly acted, perfectly written.
And directed.
And directed. Just everything came together absolutely perfectly.
Well said. Yeah, that was a really special episode. Yeah. That's like one that will really beautifully paint the legacy of this show, I think. So we love everyone over at Crashing. Pete, you've been on the show before, and we love you very much. And you really did craft and create something that was not only a great show, but I think a really special show. So
yeah.
Let's get it. That being said, let's get into some news.
AfterBuzz TV News.
So, as we've been discussing, the show was sadly not picked up for season 4 by HBO. But I have been hearing rumblings of a movie. Do we think a Crashing movie would work?
I would be into it. I
would
think
too.
that, yeah, I would watch that. I'd watch a Crashing movie.
What would you want to see?
I would want to see more resolution. I don't want Allie and Pete to be together, and I want them to be okay not being together. So I would want to see them basically breaking up almost immediately after we see this like kiss scenario, even if they like laugh or whatever, and then like they talk about like, oh, we kissed and then we just cracked up because it was so ludicrous that would even be a thing, and then we immediately were friends, you know, like
I think that'd be, yeah, I agree.
I would like that, like just something where he's not even focused so much on a relationship, and we see him grow more as a comedian and kind of work a little bit harder for things instead of just like, oh, that's cool that this awesome thing fell into my lap. Like,
well, what I'd be really interested to see is like, if they do a movie, you know, you need like a self-contained story.
Yeah.
And I'd be really interested to see Pete really mess up on stage, really do something almost irredeemable to watch the comic's redemptive journey. Because like, we're at a point right now where I think there's a version of Louis C.K. that could redeem himself, but he's so actively refusing to do that. And I think it'd be interesting to see the show tackle that. I don't know if that would be a Pete.
Yeah.
I don't see Pete's character doing something on stage that would be so irredeemable, but I think like the comic's journey post huge blunder is a really interesting thing to explore. So
I think that would be really, really good. I feel like because he wouldn't want people to misassociate the fictionalized version with himself. If they did that, it would probably be a fictional comic again.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they would go for his character necessarily, you know.
But maybe his best, maybe Jamie, maybe Allie or something.
Maybe.
I don't know. Either way, if a Crashing movie happens, we'd be interested to see it. The last news I want to go over is just the New York Times wrote up kind of a nice summation of the show. The article is titled, "For Crashing, the third season was the charm, also the end," which is interesting. And it just had some nice kind of retrospective looks on the show. In particular, what we've been talking about with this episode with Dov Davidoff's character kind of going off the rails. Significantly, the show began to explore the implications of Pete's maleness and whiteness in the current cultural climate, perhaps not with great depth, but with the nuance and resistance to tidy lessons that some hipper productions could emulate. Another thing I want to talk about, they talked about Kat this season and Madeline Wise's performance, and because we had Madeline on the show, I'd love to just kind of shout her out. The daring move, especially this season, though, was the new girlfriend, who was a lanky, striking, high-strung, and highly sexual ball of fire, played with utter conviction by Madeline Wise. Here was another show where the schlub gets the woman who's out of his league, but again, Crashing took it head-on. Pete really was out of his league, emotionally at least, and when the relationship flamed out, he slunk away from the whole clammy, depressing mess. He slunk away, I see.
Yeah.
So it's true. I think like the show didn't demand that Pete exits with class and grace. Rather, he kind of exits with immature brokenness.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they did kind of twist the knife a little bit with the Amy Schumer kind of tag at the end there. But I did think that was, you know, a very realistic conversation with Kat's character. I've just loved pretty much throughout, but
it's really interesting.
Yeah, but just to have that conversation, her like closure conversation, I liked it.
Me too. And I guess, guys, with that, we're done. That was Crashing.
Is that our closure conversation?
That's our closure conversation. Elena and I are never going to talk again, unfortunately.
Yeah,
now
at the end.
This is it. And bye.
In 10 years, you're going to realize you made a huge mistake. And I'm going to realize I dodged a bullet.
Nice callback.
Thank you.
Guys, this has been the Crashing After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. We thank you so much for tuning along with us. A really special show on HBO that had great 3 seasons. And you know what? 3 seasons is a good run. You know, it's not 10 seasons, but the show gave us 24 great episodes of television. We thank you for that. We thank HBO for that. I'm going to try something, and I'm going to reach out to Pete's people and see if he'd want to do a series recap with us. So this might not be the end. If we can get some of the cast in to discuss the show, that could be kind of cool. So maybe stay tuned, and if you want to see it, you should go ahead and tweet.
And if not, I'll reach out to Ben Holmes, and we'll see if we can get him on the show.
Nice. Guys, my name is Jeff Graham. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Jeffrey C. Graham. I host other stuff here, particularly at the small Venn diagram intersection of Bachelor fans who are listening. You can catch me tonight for the season finale at 8 p.m. here at the network. Elena, what about you?
I'm definitely going to be watching you recapping The Bachelor. Even if I don't watch The Bachelor, I'm just going to watch that recap. I'm into it.
On the after show.
I'm Elena Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at Elena Jordan and on Instagram at Elena J. Jordan. And tonight we'll be doing the finale of Russian Doll as well. Lots of finales going on tonight.
Probably a wider contingency of mutual fans of Russian Doll, so you should check that out. And guys, once again, thanks so much. Hop in those comments. Give us 5 stars on Twitter, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.